Hey everyone, it's Monday and time for another Monday Mastery. Sorry for the jiggly screen today. I'm in my trailer and there's still a little bit of movement here. So sorry for the delay in getting going. I forgot to shave, so I was shaving quickly before we got going. So anyway, I hope you all had a great and blessed weekend and a great week last week. Life in the RV is going to be interesting. I'm finally starting to unpack some boxes in here and get some stuff stowed away. And hey, Mike, thanks for joining in. Good to have you here, Addie. Glad to have you here. Thanks for joining in. And it's been kind of a crazy week, just trying to assimilate into RV life. It's one thing to live in it for the summer. It's another thing to fully transition into RV life and still unloading a few of the things from my apartment, desks and file cabinets and that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's coming along too. So, and again, please forgive me for the shaky surroundings. I may have to find some other location to do this as we go forward. Hey, Linda, thanks for joining in. Glad to see you here. Sam, thanks for being here. Good to see you. One of the things this was something that came up over the weekend, and with a friend of mine, she and I talked a little bit, and she had just broken up with a boyfriend, and they were separated. Hey Deb, thanks for joining in. They were separated for maybe a day or so, and she was just devastated, and he came back. Hey Gary, thanks for joining in. Glad to see you're here. And she and I talked a little bit, and she was just heartbroken and devastated. She thought he was the one. He started treating her like dirt. And lo and behold, she goes back to him. And, it was one of those hard conversations I had to have with her. And she obviously didn't listen. She was following her heart. But it came down to sharing the truth with her. That anybody that made her feel like dirt or lower than dirt was not worthy of her. But she didn't see that. And I think part of it is that she is in a state of recently divorced and not knowing how to be on her own, single. And, she's going to end up making some mistakes. And we all do. And I'm not condemning her for making mistakes, but one of the things that I did, and it was really hard for me to do because I know she wanted to be in this relationship, was to tell her that it was the wrong relationship. And it can be very hard to number one tell a hard truth like that. That you don't belong in that relationship. You deserve a better relationship. But it's also hard hearing that. Our hearts and want so much for that relationship to work out that we literally ignore the warning signs. We literally ignore the red flags. And she's going to do, and we've all done it. I know I've done it, and I'm sure most of you have, that we do what we can to try to make this relationship work. And in spite of all that she's going to do, I know that in a month, 2 months, 10 months, whatever it is, she's going to recognize that she deserves better. And she's going to go through this heartache, and she loves hard. I mean, when she commits to somebody, she's in, and it's going to be hard to watch. But I'm on the outside, and I'm not participating in the relationship, and it's going to be up to her to make that decision when she's had enough. Hey, Nancy, thanks for joining in. Lisa, thanks for being here. And Lisa says, I just went through this. And Lisa, you're not alone. I think we've all gone through this at one time or another. And our family and friends may be telling us, no, this is not the right relationship for you. No, this is not healthy. He's not the right guy. And but we tend to close ourselves off from that truth. I had someone ask me last week. She reached out and said, my family is telling me that the guy I'm dating is not the right one for me. And she asked, should I listen to them? And I responded with a question, or with a couple of questions. I said, does he have everything you want in your relationship? Can you see yourself being together for the rest of your lives? And her answer was no. There were things that a couple of things that bothered her, and one in specific was the age difference. And so when she shared that with me, I just shared with her. I said, you have your answer. If he doesn't have everything that you're looking for in your relationship, it's not extraordinary. As hard as you work at trying to make it right, as hard as you work to continue the relationship, it's never going to be the right relationship. And I see this every day, in marriages, and 85% of marriages that last, and let me step back. About 60% of first marriages last. And of those 65% or 60% of marriages that last, only about 15% of them are great relationships, or great marriages, are extraordinary marriages. So that means the other 85 are at best good, but they're nowhere near extraordinary. They're nowhere near great even. Most of them are mediocre. And we just go through the motions to try to keep the relationship together because we don't want to start over. And the whole point of dating right now, as you all are starting over, as I have started over, is to do it right this time, to pay attention to the red flags. Let me catch up on some of the notes here. Hey, Nancy, thanks for joining in. Lisa says, let's see. I got that one. Hey, Jacqueline. Glad to see you're here. Sam says, ain't that the truth? Just got out of a relationship that was chock full of red flags because I wanted it to be the one. Sam, that's a great observation, is that you wanted it to be the one. And I just, and for those of you that have been here for the last, maybe 6 or 8 months, I shared with you back in June, probably late June, that a relationship that I had just, in my heart of hearts, knew was the relationship for me. It failed. It didn't work out because as we got to know each other, there were some differences that were just deal breakers for me, and some of them were deal breakers for her too. Hey, Phil, thanks for joining in. Let's see. Let me catch this. Lisa says, we were compatible, but at the same time, it wasn't right. And Lisa, that's a great observation too, is that you can be compatible in so many ways, but if there's something missing, it might be a spiritual connection. It might be an emotional connection. It could be the chemistry that is just missing. There could be any number of things that can trip up a great relationship. Maybe you don't speak the same love languages, but it's, there, and that's why it's so important to do your due diligence, or do your research, and get to know somebody before you make a commitment to that person. compatibility is awesome. If you like the same things, you enjoy doing things or going places together, that's great. But that doesn't make it extraordinary. That doesn't make them the one that you want to come home to every night. So there's so much to finding that extraordinary relationship. Let's catch this one here real quick. Sam says, and to last week's topic, the exit interview was not an exercise in anything but hurt feelings. Oh, that is so true. And that's, Sam, that's been my experience both personally and professionally. I've had conversations with people that have done it. I've done it myself. And in probably, I would guess 90% of the cases, all you do is open up old wounds again. And then you have to start that healing process all over. And it's not fun. You in rare cases, you may get some closure, or in other cases, you'll end up getting back together because you've stirred up old emotions, and then you're back to the same old merry-go-round. The reason you broke up the first time is generally going to be the reason you break up the second, third, fourth, 10th, 12th time. There's no point in, once you've ended a relationship, just move on. And I apologize, folks. I'm trying to sit as still as I can, but I'm gonna have to sit on my hands so I don't shake the trailer because they're flailing. It's you have to pay attention to the reason that you left. I could find all kinds of reasons to go back to the last woman I dated. But when I sit down and look at all the negatives, they're still there. Nothing has changed. And as much as I would have liked to have had that relationship been the one and to have gone on forever, it's not right. And either one or both of us would have ultimately been miserable. And that stuff just comes back to bite you later on. Addie says, I don't notice the... Oh, okay. Well, okay, thanks. I can, in my picture, I can see things shaking and moving around, so I'm feeling kind of awkward here a little bit. So anyway, well, if it's not bothering you guys too much, I'll just keep going. But anyway, it's when you have to, and part of ending a relationship is being truthful, and part of being a good friend or family member is being truthful, being honest. We all say that we on virtually almost virtually every profile that I read online, I want somebody that's truthful or honest. I want somebody that's loyal, and well, who doesn't? But are you willing to hear the hard truth? Are you willing to hear that the relationship is not a great relationship for you? Are and that is as hard as that can be to sound, especially if it's a one-sided relationship where one person just feels that they're with their soulmate and the other person says, not so much. When you get that kind of a relationship or an interaction with someone, you're going to have your heart broken, and it's all part of the process. But you have to recognize that if it's not an extraordinary relationship for them, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means you're not the right one for them, even though you may have felt that they are the right ones for you. You have to find a relationship where you're both feeling that it's extraordinary, that you're both the right one for the other. And Jacqueline says, you can't make someone love you. Absolutely right. But, and that's, Jacqueline, that goes back to what I started telling, the story I started telling about my friend who went back to the guy that that was hurtful to her. It's She will do everything in her power to make that relationship work. I've seen her do it several times, and she's only been divorced since what is it, May? And she was dating when before her divorce was final. And so, there's, it's a hard road to travel when you're bound and determined to be in a relationship. If you're giving everything, if you're giving it your all, you're going to end up getting hurt badly. And it's let me catch this one here. Jacqueline says, you can't make someone love you, Rick. And absolutely. All you can do is be someone who can be loved. The rest is up to the person to realize your worth. Absolutely. And unfortunately, and not only for my friend, but a lot of us, we all desire to be loved. We all desire to be in a relationship, or at least most of us do. But what are you willing to sacrifice? You shouldn't be willing to sacrifice your happiness, your joy, your soul for that relationship, just to have somebody there, just to have somebody to go out to dinner with, or to go dancing with, or to watch TV with. Relationships are much more serious than that. Addie says, I've had a friend critique every guy I had dates with. She didn't even give me a chance to really get to know the person without her thoughts in the back of my head. I wanted to make up my own mind and make my own mistakes along the way. I just stopped telling her about my dates until I was in it for a month. And that's okay, Addie. That's perfectly fine. You have to be able to get in there and date and not have it skewed by anybody else. I mean, unless there is some serious problems in the background that you're not aware of. Whether he's a pedophile, or what are some of the other problems with in your case with guys. I'm just drawing a blank. Sam says, it's like that Bonnie Raitt song, I can't make you love me if you don't. I can't make my heart feel something it won't. Absolutely. And you have to, and not only do you have to be honest about that, but you have to be willing to hear that from somebody else. If they're not if you're in love with somebody and they're not in love with you, you have to be willing to hear that. That's the only way that you're going to be able to find your soulmate. You have to. This is a very vulnerable journey that you're on, and anybody that's not willing to be vulnerable to being hurt is going to end up either alone or in a mediocre relationship. Addie says, I didn't want her input. Well, and that may be a friend that, Addie, that you want to put on the back burner. Just simply for the fact, if she's giving you input when you haven't asked for it, that's not healthy either. Where I'm talking about hearing the truth is when you say, when you tell somebody, yeah, be honest with me, what do you think? That's when they should be giving you honest feedback. But so many of us are afraid of hurting somebody else's feelings. We sugarcoat it. We don't come out and say what's really on our mind or what we really think. So you're only getting just a vague sugar-coated opinion of the truth. Hey, Deborah, thanks for joining in. Janine, thanks for joining in. Deborah says, just ended a relationship with someone who just couldn't heal from his divorce 5 years ago. And that's, oh man, that's hard. And guys, with all due respect to the men, we tend to do it wrong. We tend to try to jump in way too quick, and we don't take time to heal. And when we don't take time to heal, we're not in a proper mental state, emotional state to have a decent relationship with someone. And Janine says, itchy nose. Somebody must be talking about me out there. Isn't that the old wives' tale? It needs to be something both sides need to work toward a good relationship. Can't be one-sided, as eventually will lead to resentment. Don't sell yourself short. Absolutely. And it's and I Janine, I'm a firm believer that it's either going to work or it isn't. It's going to work right from the beginning. It doesn't mean that there won't be hiccups along the way, but when you're in the right relationship, you ought to be able to tell your partner anything and everything, and they should be able to do the same with you. Doesn't mean that there might not be hurt feelings from time to time, or you might get your toes stepped on. It's just a natural part of our nature. We all have egos that we don't like our egos being bruised. And I know that I can get my ego bruised when somebody critiques a performance, a program, or something that I've written. And I've had to learn how to accept that critique and say, okay, that's their opinion, and what is valid, where do I think that they're right, and where do I think that I can improve, and then where do I leave the rest of it. Deb says, sounds like she's judging by what might be right for her, not you. Absolutely. That's absolutely correct. And when you start judging, and I'm assuming that you're Deb, that you're addressing that to Addie, and I unfortunately I can't tell when these are comments to other participants on the broadcast. So if that was addressed towards Addie, I apologize for commenting on that one. But I can't see. Only you guys can see. So if I speak out of turn, I know I realized I made a comment on somebody's chat last week, and then as I was scrolling through the chats later, it says, oh, they were replying to somebody else. Okay, that makes sense. Okay. Okay, Deb says, yes, it was, but to you too. Okay, we're good. And so anyway, one of the hardest things we can do is to share the truth and to hear it. And one of the lessons that I've learned is, let's just be truthful up front. Let's just state what's going on. Let's just share the truth and not hide behind it. Saying, if you have to leave a relationship, don't use cowardice or hide behind cowardice and say, oh, it's all me, I just need some time. Oh Lord, if I've heard that once, I've heard it 100 times over the years, and it's such a cliche. And yes, it is you, but you're the one that has decided that this isn't a good, healthy relationship for you, and that's okay. But you have to say that. If you say, it's me, I just need time, what you're doing is you're leaving the door open for whoever you're walking away from to assume that you just need some time to think and you're going to come back. And the odds are that's not happening. So, when you're straight honest, straightforward, and you tell the truth, there's a great saying, and I think it was by Mark Twain or Sam Clemens. He said, "When you tell the truth, you don't have a thing to remember. You don't have to hide behind it." Hey, Rose, thanks for joining in. Let's see. We've got. Rose says, "I would rather have someone be honest and break it off rather than sitting or than stinging or stringing someone along." Absolutely, and that's another part of it. When you're sitting in a relationship and nobody wants to be truthful with the other, it drags the relationship on longer than it needs to be until somebody finally breaks. Until somebody finally gets upset enough and say, "I've had it," and then it's then you're going to have even deeper wounds, because well, that can go both ways. I can see situations where it's like, whew, finally somebody made the decision, or I never saw this coming. So it literally could go either way. So anyway, so it's just so important to be able to share your thoughts, ideas, feelings, and in the wrong relationship, it's going to be tougher. In the right relationship, it's going to be a lot easier. And it's one of those things that as you practice, you get better at it. It's not like it's a lot like exercise. The more often you do it, the easier it gets. It's just sometimes starting that exercise, starting to tell the whole truth, is a lot more difficult than it actually seems. And again, you'll get stronger at it. You'll get better at it as you go. So it's and don't hold it against somebody when they tell you the truth. When they tell you, if you ask for their thoughts on their relationship or the person you're dating, don't beat them up. Don't get mad. I have the feeling that, and she hasn't spoken to me since I shared my disappointment with her, that she went back to this guy. And for those of you that may have just tuned in, I was shared earlier that a friend of mine had broken up with her boyfriend and was all dejected and just an emotional mess. And within a day or two, she was back with him. And I just shared with her that it was the wrong relationship for her, and because he wasn't treating her like a gentleman. And I won't get into any of the details, but that being said, she didn't want to hear it. She wanted this relationship so bad that she just went back and will do anything to try to make this relationship work. And I think we've all done it at some point. We've all felt very strongly for someone or towards someone, and no matter how hard we work, no matter what we do, it's not going to be the right relationship. And if you have to work really hard, if you have to jump through all kinds of hoops to please the other person, it's the wrong relationship. It's when you're with the right one, it comes a lot easier. It's just like a hand fitting in a glove. You just mold together. And you're going to, as you mold together, you're going to find that you have a lot of things in common that you didn't even realize. And and one of the comments that I've heard is that you get set in your ways. Well, when you're in the right relationship, odds are you'll find somebody that is set in their ways the same way that you are. I don't know if that makes sense. You do things a certain way, and your new partner will do things in a similar fashion. So there's not a lot of training, as it were, on how you do things, and so it just makes the relationship build so much more quickly and easily, and develops a much deeper connection. You guys have gotten silent on me here, so come on, jump in and tell me what's going on. Tell me what's going on in your world, and a couple of you have. But here you go. And Rose jumped in and says, loneliness is the hardest factor to overcome. I would rather be alone than be with someone who doesn't value me for me. I agree. And that's and one of the hardest things to do is to be. And hey, Nancy, thanks for joining in. I'm going to pause that one for a second. Loneliness, there are two types of loneliness. There's a loneliness in being alone, and then there's loneliness being in a relationship. And it is so hard. I think it's much harder to be in a relationship and feel alone, that your partner's not there for you, whether it's physically or mentally. It's so difficult to try to have a relationship with someone that's not there for you emotionally, and maybe not even physically. And Nancy says, I've had a few dates after Keith's death, but I knew that even though they thought it was going great, I knew I wasn't totally in the game, so I stopped. Great observation, Nancy. That's, you should be proud of yourself for that. It's often hard to admit that we're not quite ready. We're not quite there yet. And and please forgive me. I know that Keith passed away a couple of 2 or 3 years ago. But how long ago? Just refresh my memory, if you don't mind. How long ago was that? And Nancy was had found her soulmate and was with him for a few years, and unfortunately he passed away. So, but there will come a point in time, Nancy, and you'll know it when you get there. You'll know it, that it's okay to start dating again. Guys are not very sensitive to those things. 3 years ago in July. Okay, thank you. So you've still got a little bit of time there, because there's so much to overcome in losing your soulmate. So it just takes time, and when you're ready, you'll get there. You'll know it, and and then you'll move forward. But until then, it's just take your time, be patient, and just let the guys know that you're not ready. Because there'll be guys that will want to visit with you, or will want to date you, and just say, "No, I'm not ready," and they'll keep pushing. They may keep pushing, but just say, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. And hey, Susan, thanks for joining in. Glad you're here. So anyway, what else can we talk? What else can I share with you? It's the truth is the truth, and if you're willing to hear it, it can be very beneficial. If you're not willing to hear it, it can be like daggers. And I think what I shared a little bit earlier is that, when somebody critiques something that I've done, or, critiques somebody that I've dated, and, and I can be as hard on anybody as on anybody as anybody else. But there, you have to be able to listen. You have to be able to sort out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Listen to what people have to say objectively. Now, Addie, I'm not talking about somebody who just randomly gives you their opinion unsolicited. I'm talking about solicited opinions. I'm talking about solicited questions. What do you think? Should I do this? Should I date him? Should I not? Should I keep going with them? Should I pursue this relationship? If you're not sure. But with that being said, if you're not sure, it's probably not the right relationship. And the reason I say that is because when when you're with the right one, it's just going to be so smooth. It's just going to be like a hot knife through butter. It's just going to it's just going to be so good and so much easier than any relationship you've ever had. And I think, Nancy, you can attest to this. I don't know if Char's on here tonight, but she can attest to this, that, it doesn't mean every part of the relationship is going to be perfect. It's, there are going to be bumps along the way. Life happens. People get stressed out, and, they react differently to different types of stress. And let me catch this comment here. Hey, Lindy, thanks for joining in. She said, I finally figured out this red flag thing. Thanks for your expertise. My pleasure. Hopefully you're starting to spot your red flags and being able to walk away from relationships that aren't right for you. And I think I'm guessing that it's based, your comment is based on your question last week about whether you should feel guilty about or selfish about not wanting to date somebody with younger children. Or children that are at least still in the house. So I'm proud of you, Lindy, for starting to discover red flags and understand how to pay attention to them, because that is so important. Is that the thing is, infatuation blinds us to red flags. They keep us from paying attention. They keep us from making the right decisions. We have blinders on. You're with somebody new, and all of your friends and family can say, oh man, this is the wrong relationship. But our blinders on, we either, if we do see them, we ignore them, say, yeah, I can live with that. Or we're just oblivious to the problems. And we all go through it. And it's just with some maturity and some dating experience, you start to recognize those red flags sooner. And that's why it's so important to have your must-have and your deal-breaker lists written down, so that after a great date or a great month of dating, that you can sit back and say, okay, does he have everything that I'm looking for? Does she display any of my red flags? Or does she have any of my deal breakers? Let's see. Deb says, I think you try being nice and have a tendency to leave that little dangler that they grab onto. Then you just end up back at the threshold again, until you are blunt about your feelings. Absolutely. And that goes back to what I mentioned earlier, is when you break up with somebody, that you say, yeah, it's me, I just need time. That's one of those danglers that you leave it hanging out there, that there's a possibility that you'll get back together. But you have to, but you're absolutely right, Deb. You have to be blunt about it and straightforward. It just doesn't happen any other way. Lindy says, it's so different from 30 years ago. Yeah, dating has changed. I mean, there's a lot of differences. I mean, some of the fundamentals still remain the same, but there's texting and email. Even email wasn't that popular 30 years ago, but texting, you can break up with somebody via text. And that's probably the most cowardly way out, in my opinion. Now, if they start the argument in text, which I've just had happen recently, that um, she started the argument in text, and I just wasn't even going to go because I was ending our communication, and I just said, okay, I'm out. I didn't want to have the argument. I didn't want to fight about whatever it was she wanted to argue about, and I said, I'm done. So I walked away from that conversation in a text. Um, but we'd only had one date, so it And Addie says, so it was fun this weekend. I was getting gas, and a gentleman on the other pump asked if he could pay me a compliment. On the inside, I was laughing and thinking of conversations we've had here about starting conversations as he paid me a compliment. I was walking back to my car from the store, and he started giving me his number. Haha. I wasn't interested, so I chuckled. Kudos for him trying. Absolutely. See, that's what it's all about. It was probably a little more aggressive. At least it was a little more aggressive than I would have done. But he was attracted to you. He wanted to get to know you, and so. But that's exactly what I'm talking about. Being able to strike up a conversation with anyone, anywhere. And I think one of the things that I wouldn't have done in that situation is I wouldn't have asked if I could give you a compliment. I would have just done it. Addie says, yes, a bit too forward too soon. And and it goes back again. I wouldn't have asked for permission to give a compliment. I would have just, whatever the compliment is, I would have said, you look beautiful today. I love your dress. I love your shoes. I love your boots. Whatever it is, love your hair. Whatever it is, and ladies, you'd be surprised how many women that I walk up to that have like bright red hair or bright orange hair or bright purple hair or maroon, and I just say, I love the color of your hair, and the eyes just light up. And I'm not hitting on them, but it's just a sincere compliment. But in the right situation, that can lead to exchanging phone numbers and you might follow up. And guys, if you're paying attention, listen here. You might ask, I love the color of your hair, and she's going to say, oh, thank you so much. And is that a new color for you, or is that the way you've worn it for a while? And then she goes on and tells you, and you start developing a conversation. Very simple, very, very innocuous, I guess, is the term I'm looking for. So, it's just pay attention to opportunities, and those opportunities will pop up so much more often than you think. And again, you don't have to pay a compliment or start a conversation to get somebody's phone number. Although, if in the dating world that does help. But if you're shy, if you're not used to giving compliments or not used to trying to start a conversation, start with a compliment and just compliment, just one person after another, and you will be surprised. Number one, you'll make them feel better, but at the same time, you're going to feel better. And when you feel better, you start to have a different air about you, a different presence about you, because you've just made you've affected somebody's day in a positive way. So, there's a lot of stuff to be said for just paying somebody a compliment. And then, you just never know when those conversations are going to strike up and going to lead to something more. But you have to be willing to have the conversation. You have to be willing to start with anyone, anywhere, anytime. So anyway, and again, it's all about telling the truth. If you're sincerely enjoying, somebody's hair color, or you see somebody that's wearing a dress, and ladies, you guys compliment each other all the time. Compliment a guy, and guys, compliment women. Don't wait for them to say something to you. It's often hard. Ladies, guys have egos too. We don't like to be shot down because we're usually the ones that have to initiate the conversation. We're usually the ones that have to initiate the exchanging of numbers. So just be patient with us. Sometimes we get a little anxious, and like Addie's illustration, that he was a little too forward too soon. But nothing ventured, nothing gained. So anyway, let's catch a last couple of questions here, or comments, if you want. Otherwise, we can kind of wrap it up. It's kind of strange here. When we started this conversation tonight, it was still a little bit light outside. You could see the pasture behind me, and where I have my camper set up, and I'm not crazy about the reflection of the light in the window, so we'll have to figure out something there. So just a lot of little experiments. And now next week, I think I will be in Ironwood again. I have to make a trip up there for other business reasons. So we'll be up in Ironwood, and I'll have a much more stable platform. And it'll be a lot colder, because the last time I left Ironwood, there was 3 or 4 or 5 inches of snow on the ground. So hopefully they won't have that yet, and I'll be able to duck in and duck out without a snowstorm. You're very welcome, Susan. Now, if you guys have questions, feel free to shoot me questions after the show. Otherwise, if you need some help, always check out my book, Dating Backward, Practical Guide to Dating and Finding Your Soulmate. It's available paperback through my website and on Amazon. And if you're into ebooks, it's available as an ebook on their Kindle reader. So anyway, Deborah, thank you for joining in. Susan, Addie, Lindy, thanks for being here. Phil, Mike, and everybody else that was on here, I appreciate it. Have a great and blessed week, everyone, and we'll see you next Monday for Monday Mastery live at 5. Terry says, "Hey Terry, thanks for catching the good nights." He says, "I need to set a timer to get on when you start." Yeah, it's generally, I was a little bit late this morning, or this evening, but it's always 5 o'clock Central, and now we're Central Standard Time again. So we'll see you next Monday at 5 a.m. Set a little timer on your calendar, Terry, and you can get here at 5. Have a great and blessed week, everyone. We'll see you next week.